You probably know this already, but survival is one of the most fundamental elements of our existence. When it comes to video games, we could, you say, put it into challenge and rather test your skills in such situations. If you're excited by that idea or just like survival games in general, we've got a list of some of the best survival games of 2023 for your Android and iOS devices as well. Available on the Play Store for a couple of weeks now, we've got over here a survival semi-open world multiplayer craft and action game going by the name Sailor's Odyssey. Sailor's Odyssey is sitting on the Play Store with almost 10,000 downloads and a 4.5 out of 5 about some pirate marooned on an island and premise technically where you have to fight off all sorts of mythical and fantasy forces and loot, with which you get to buy better gear and eventually survive. This game is really nice in visuals and about 400 megabytes in size only. Coming up behind that, we have Life After Night Falls, sitting on the Play Store as an online survival action adventure that takes you down about, well, if you're lucky, 8 gigabytes of space, if not around 13 to 14. Some I've heard actually 18. Life After is, you could safe to say, one of the few games out there that doesn't really let you have a life once you get into it. I mean, technically, there is a reason it is called Life After. It's got a great story, has farming, shooting, and survival elements, and is playable free. Dead by Daylight Mobile finally went on and got itself a legit update recently, maybe like 10 days ago, and ever since it is literally perfect. If you have ever been a fan of it, you know, at some point this game was the buggiest on the Play Store, so if you're a returning viewer here, you might consider that. Dead by Daylight is playable with a controller, only online, takes you about 3 gigabytes in size, and this is how it really looks. Coming our way from the same developers of Off-Road Outlaws. I've mentioned this game a couple of times already with a 4.5 as it released on the Play Store. We've got ever since last month a game called American Marksman, which is, you'll see in a second, mainly a hunting sim and a survival to some portions. This is actually an offline open world, you could say shooter. I'd like to think one of the most advanced in details and visuals compared to any other game in the list. It's a free game, takes you down about 300 megabytes initially, and it is downloaded over 100,000 times already. At number 5 from a few days ago, we have a strategy survival shooter multiplayer game over here called Dustlands. This is a semi-real-time management tactical shooter, you could probably guess, somewhere like an alien shooter and a State of Decay. Guys, Dustland over here is an online gaming nature, it's about 1 gigabyte in size, downloaded almost 50,000 times already, as a 4.8 out of 5, and it is huge in scale. This is one of the most addicting games released in March, and it is actually, in its current state, bug-free. Been available for about a month now, with over 1 million downloads ever since release. Whiteout Survival over here, in case you're into strategy survival games, is perhaps the biggest of its own kind released for years. This is actually from the same developers of Family Farm Adventure, so considering the company's previous works, this game is packed with support. Their new game over here is really well funded, and it's one of the most generous games in the list. It's about 500 megabytes in size only, and getting regular updates almost every week. As the only work of its developers ever. At number 7, we have a game over here called Days After. Well, this is the first time it's getting a mention in our lists, although it's been out for almost 2 years now, guys. Days After, you could definitely see as inspired by Last Day on Earth, a little smaller in scale and support, then even has actually a lot more ads, which is probably the most annoying side of it. That aside, this game's really one of the most addicting games in replay. It's pretty easy to get the hang of, really smooth, and actually really generous. It's about 150 megabytes in size and playable free. Coming up behind that, we have the one and only Last Day on Earth Survival. A pretty typical, so to speak, survival game that's downloaded over 100 million times on the Play Store only, in which Well, mainly you gather supplies, fight zombies, build items, a shelter, and a huge open world to explore. Last Day on Earth over here is a free game, a pay to win though, and if I had to consider difficulty, it's actually one of the most frustrating games in the list, simply just because of the energy cost in the game. Sitting on both platforms, but on the Google Play, this is the lowest rated game in the list with more than 5 million downloads already. We have Dark Days, Zombie Survival. This is a single player action adventure in nature. In graphics and visuals, you could obviously see a lot like Borderlands, but this is in a third person and actually in a good third person, like it's legit if we're considering the gameplay. The gameplay is smooth, it actually works, it's free, pretty decent in replay and rewards as well. Game's about 600 megabytes in size and it's a really good game. Probably the most graphically demanding top-down survival game on the Play Store. At number 10 we have, with over 10 million downloads, Dawn of Zombies Survival, also known as DOZ, an online open-world post-apocalyptic zombie survival by Royal Ark. The company's also biggest game, and in my opinion, one of the most amount of content and missions this formula or combination ever had to offer in the mobile gaming. This game takes you about 2 gigabytes in size. It's huge for a top-down to consider. It's playable only online and free all the way. Sitting on the Play Store with over 5,000 purchases in less than 2 weeks, we've got over here Settlement Survival. This game was actually awarded by the Google Play as the #1 sold sim for the past month. It's just strategy survival, quite inspired by the PC game Banished. Settlement Survival is ported to mobile from PCs. It's sitting on all platforms as of a few days ago and takes you down for $6. Game's about 600 megabytes in size and it is playable offline. And this is how it works. Imagine what you'd get as a mobile game, though, if we were to mix Dying Light, State of Decay, survival and strategy elements. Well, the answer to that would be, as of a month ago, what we've got here. A game called Left 4 Dead. I mean, not the number 4, but, you know, the word 4. Anyway, this is actually a story-driven, mainly online strategy, tower defense, survival game, quite a bit inspired by State of Decay franchise, and it's taking you down about 1 gigabyte in storage. It's free and quite huge in scale. Coming up behind that from July last year. Well, first I'm mentioning this one as it actually underwent the shadow of a lot of bigger releases. We have Dead Wasteland. This is a semi-tactical shooter, but not really. More like a survival RPG open world shooter. Just imagine a Dead Island game, but made by an indie developer and set in a desert. If that idea, or what you see here, thrills you, this game is in fact free and very fun to get the hang of. Also playable offline. Awarded by the Google Play itself for months as the #1 and a few times the #3 free-to-play strategy survival game on the platform with a 4.4 and over 10 million downloads for a while now, we've got over here from December 2021 Doomsday Last Survivors. This is actually from the same developers of Lords Mobile with over 100 million downloads on the Play Store, funded to the brim and getting updates like almost every few days. Nonetheless, it's still a buggy game, really rewarding however, and a little boring after a while, you could say that. And one more thing, it's actually quite heavily taken inspiration from State of Survival, so if you haven't played that game, make sure to give that one a try. By NetEase, the mobile publishers, developers, we've got over here for over 2 years now in the making Project Extreme. This is a survival sandbox third-person shooter, kind of mission-based multiplayer like Division, but story-wise it's about a post-disaster version of Earth where storms have ruined countries and people are divided into 2 groups for, you know, survival. Project Extreme here is only rumored to be released as an offline game in about a month, so just keep it in mind. Simply the most downloaded survival game in the list over here with almost 500 million downloads on both platforms. At number 16 we have Raft survival. It's been out for like 5 years already, almost a 4.3 from the same developers of Raft Survival, mobile exclusive. I could also tell you this is the best survival game that I personally played, only ranked and leveled down by the existence of ads in the game, which are actually pretty reasonable. Anyway, it's got some pay-to-win elements, nonetheless it's a free game and about 400 megabytes in size. Last Outlander has been available for a little over half a year now, and it's now sitting on both the Google and the App Store with a 4.125 out of 5 in some regions, which is, considering the 2.9 it was given at the beginning, a miracle for a survival game out there. This is an open world building and crafting survival with probably one of the most enjoyable gameplays in its genre. Really addicting, not greedy one bit, playable in single player only, and unfortunately only online. It's also about 1 gigabytes in size. And last but not least, we have maybe one of the biggest, maybe just the biggest survival horror game of 2023. Just a quick honorable mention over here to leave things on a good note. Game called Case 2 Animatronics. If you like a little bit of extra challenge, Case 2 has more than that to offer on top of a legit graphic for a mobile, PC to mobile port, and a free game. One problem, you need to be online to play this game initially. You get an ad every time you die, but there is an offline option in this game where you need to purchase $1.